Okay, so first thing you do is you pick your reference art, and best thing to do is whether it's hand drawn or picked off the net, you're gonna want to put it through your computer and change it to get the size you think you want it, and then make another copy at 20% smaller and 20% bigger, and then print out all three. That way you can hold it up, the reference up on the body part, and see which one actually fits best, because it's not always going to be the one you might think it off, first hand. As far as making the first step, making the stencil, once you know the proper size of the piece, what we're going to do in making the stencil, I'll outline all the major hard lines, and then I'll make markings for wherever there's creases or hard shadows. I'm going to do this, and then I'll show you the reason why I always make the stencil on the actual photocopy itself. The Spirit Master, notice there's no yellow film, that's Thermofax, which is not the dark purple Spirit Master film. But you'll want to just take your, do not just lay your art on the purple sheet and then trace it and then cut it out of here. The way I've always done it, and I think it's a lot better, because if you just lay the artwork right on the Spirit Master, then you'll trace it, and it's easier to flip it, hold it up to the light, and you'll see if you've missed any lines. And that saves a lot of time, makes it a lot easier so you don't miss any markings. But I'm going to do this, and I'll show you what kind of markings I made where to map out everything and what kind of markings you want. So I'm going to take care of that, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I've traced everything out. All we have areas that are really close to the same tone but just separated by slight values. You'll draw around the darker or lighter values so that you have marks to show the separation, just as a road map of where to go. You might make little markings on your light, and like really light spots, but this is pretty much done. I mean, you take it like this and you hold it up to the light, and if you're missing any lines, you'll be able to see it. But pretty much every mark that I really want is there. So now I just need to throw out the pigskin and prep that. Okay, so this is my stencil. I'm going to use my color version off my PC for my actual reference. Basically, everything is just set up the same. Just do it all the same like normal. Basically, the way Abe Sapien's done is in blues. I'll throw a reference up, I'm sure you know who he is, but basically I'll need some light blue, medium blue-green, black, white. I could use just white, black, and blue and create the rest. This dusty blue is like probably perfect medium for most of what I'll be doing. If I didn't have this, I could just mix up some gray, a light gray, and mix it with the medium blue and create it. The less inks you have, the more you're going to need to know about mixing colors. I'm doing all of this, no liners. I'm using a 13 mag and a 7 mag. I don't see any reason to use a liner. I'd never use one unless I really have to, like some old school, new school type stuff. Prep my, I don't know if anybody else does this, but I only use like Viva towels, and I have to like pre-moisten them, like just so. I don't know if anybody else does that. That's just my thing. My machines are both these machines are both set up about $1.50. about 400 grams. So medium tension, medium to long stroke, so that I can shade and color with them both. And that's that. So I'm just gonna grab that pigskin and show you a bit about that next. Everything else I'm just setting up just like I would anything else, so that I can see what's different, because I've never done this before. So let me go grab that pigskin. Okay, now the first thing that I've learned about pigskin is that you can get it in two different forms. And what I mean by that is there's the actual skin, and then there's what they call fatback. This skin does not have the, you can find it with like an inch thick fat layer, which is going to make it pretty sloppy and nasty. So if you can find just the actual dermis with a thin layer of fat tissue on there, that's going to be a lot better to work with. First thing I'm going to do is scrub it down with alcohol and get all that oil off of there, because it is a little residual grease all over the place. So there, we'll clean out the alcohol, prep it. If you do end up only being able to find the fatback stuff, I would probably suggest you only work for about 20 minutes and throw it back in the freezer to keep it cool. Maybe even use lots and lots of towels to absorb all the nasty stuff. When you apply the stencil stuff, stencil gel, whatever you got, only takes a little bit. Smear that on. Don't want it wet, because that will just make your stencil dissolve and smear all over the place. So once that absorbs into there, then we'll just a little less absorbent than human skin. But we'll just put that on there. That's good enough. It's a little broken up. There's a lot of deep lines in the skin. A lot of, as you can imagine. But that's fine. I'm going to let that set for probably a good half hour to really give the glycol a chance to pull the ink into the skin and let it dry really good. Let it dry really good for about 15 minutes. I'm going to throw it back in the fridge, and then I'll work on it after that. Alright, so let that soak in about 15-20 minutes, just like normal. And I'm just going to fiddle around here for a while and see if, how much different the whole thing feels. When I put this in, it's gonna go in and stay in the same color, whereas if you were to put a medium blue in the flesh, it's gonna turn gray from the redness of the skin, and then as it cools off, it will go back to looking closer to the ink color. Whereas, like I said, I put that in and it looks the same color as the ink is. That is not normal. Normally it would be a much darker color. Skin doesn't stretch, and then again it really doesn't need to. And I can already tell this is going to go in a little easier than normally would. I turn the voltage up a little bit more than I normally would because of the thickness of the skin and all that. So I'm running it a little harder than I would also. I can already tell what I'm going to do is work on it for 15 minutes, throw it in the freezer for 15 minutes. Not so it's frozen, but just so where it starts to get stiff. I want to keep it cold. I can imagine if you had the fatback product and once it gets room temperature, it's going to be a disgusting mess. So push a little bit harder than you would, and then when you do that, it kind of gives a misconception of how you're supposed to handle real skin. But like I said, take your time, because you are able to see like light spots, so I mean you can judge it that way pretty fairly. Yeah, I would say my only biggest gripe is that you push harder because it's like soft leather. But other than that, I mean, you can learn how to do what you gotta do. I'm gonna do some shading and see how easy that is. But that only took about an hour, and normally that should take about 5 hours. So you push a little too hard and it sticks a little too easy. And it's kind of a little bit deceiving. Like I said, I didn't do this really solid and careful. It's better, it's definitely 1,000 times better than practice skin. One thing about doing this, again, no blood, so therefore the skin doesn't turn red. You can see what you're doing, as opposed to where in living flesh you have to work in one area for a little while and then move to a cooler area until that redness settles down, so you can see just how dark it is. That's about the only thing that's not totally realistic. Other than that, this is a lot better than the solid color stuff as far as practicing goes. So this is really good for, like I said, lines and shading. The color is a little not so realistic. Again, you're still pushing harder than you normally would. Keep that in mind.